She was my Lepidoptera. Hanging from my branch, she curled inward. To hide her face from the sun, she was color, a pantheon of lesser gods on her skin, each given a new name, words to forget by. Or I was her branch, resting, not mine, but momentarily there. I remember her as a shell, hard and encased. She was not quite beautiful then, but if I'd had eyes to see, I would have seen. She was cased in, hiding through the paint, the oil covering her canvas. Is the canvas the masterpiece? Blank, open, where you open, darling. Dear Leppy, Linnaeus was strong and firm, so unlike me. We learned each other and grew all the same for it. We, such a strange pronoun, the us, a way to express a shattering of self, building the pieces into something closer, whole, closer and meshed, formed. I never knew desire, not ever, and even when Linnaeus, it was not desire but sacrifice, the will to say yes, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't say no. His lips were rough, chapped, and tinged with nicotine, unlike yours, so soft and tinged with sea salt. I had never known roughness before, the small fibers over our Cupid's bow bristling. We breathed for each other, his lungs inhaling mine, his heart stroking my beat, his fingers lost in the woods of my chest. Why am I telling you this, Leppy? Because I want you to understand that what happened was out of love, don't you see? Out of love. Dear Leppy, I'm writing again. My magnum opus, pouring the ink from my veins and painting a picture on the page. I'm writing, darling, I'm writing of you. As you painted me, I shall paint you right back, like the time I stood in the sunlight and you said, don't move, not for a lifetime, and I didn't. Not until the sun passed and the shade crept up my spine, not until you said, finished, and we did. So you too must stay in the vaults where I can keep you pure, where thoughts are good and of you. Dear Leppy, this morning Linnaeus called after a long relationship with silence and said he wants his token back. He said you took it, though we know that's not true. He says he never meant for you to keep it, but why would he give it away if not to be lost? I laughed behind his face and smiled. I think he can feel my animosity? No, it's not so strong. Apathy, but not so weak. Animality, like a cat. There, but distant. Supportive, but only till supper time. He has a tendency for melodrama anyway, so I wouldn't take any heed. Remember the day you met him? Out on the beaches where we tossed flat stones and gave names to the shells under our foot. When you stepped in the seaweed and grimaced, saying, it's so squishy, I can't bear it, and he watched us from his pulpit behind a windbreaker, glaring. Even then I could see his passion. I could feel it coming down the beach to froth among the waves, and when you took my hand with our waists held up by the sea, I could feel his eyes on us, daring. When you kissed me with salt in your touch, his lips touched yours also, vicarious, through me. He wants his token back, but I wouldn't give him anything now. We've given him enough. We have given him ourselves. Dear Leppy, do you remember when Linnaeus said he needed time, whatever the fuck that meant? We all need time, and we all have time. It's not going anywhere, is it? It's right here in front of our mouths to be eaten, but I suppose he meant space. And that's a different matter altogether. We couldn't help him except to give him what he wanted and leave him to his room full of wings and dust. I have never understood his fascination with creatures until the day I met you. Even still, yours is my only obsession. Linnaeus said then that I needed a new hobby. He said his creatures are true and you were just a passing fad. But he only said that because he keeps his Lepidoptera locked up behind glass while I let you roam for nectar. Try stargazing, he said. I told him he needed a good fuck and a bottle of that Russian stuff, so he slammed the door in my face and called me foul-mouthed. But I am. My mouth is foul, rotten to the tooth and stinking of lust. You told me so yourself, whispered it, when you thought that I was sleeping and placed your hand on me. I felt it the next day too, when Linnaeus was out in the streets working to put food in our bellies. He did not know that we had had our fill. Dear Leppy, I need you to bear with me, but I'm repeating a scene in my mind's eye. It seems frivolous, but I'm sure there's merit to it. Linnaeus and I were in his room full of wings and dust, walking along the aisles of time-locked butterflies, but let me recount for you verbatim, but sticking to the major points. He said, Lepidoptera, the word is Latin, did you know? It means scaly wing. Isn't that funny? Scaly wing. We look at them now, the butterflies, and we can't see scales, only color and pattern, like a living kaleidoscope. But under a microscope, they are scaled, like fish. Never trust a fish, for a fish will drown in air, and that is not natural. They have another name too, the butterflies, Propelocera. It's derived from the ancient Greek and means club horn. We can see that, can't we? Club horn. Now that makes sense with their long antenna on their heads. Club horn. Do you know what doesn't make sense? The English translation, butterfly. Really? It's so fucking contrary. Butterfly? What's the point of it? Because they're yellow? Some are. Not even all butter is yellow. Fly. I mean, it's lazy naming if you ask me, but I'm not an early man, and thanks be for that. Some say they used to be called flutterby, and somewhere down the line we mixed it all up. That would make sense. Humans have a habit of mixing it all up. Unlike butterfly, moth is much clearer. Like all things ugly, we have devoted great time and energy to it. It comes from the Old English. Have you heard of Old English? We're not Latin animals, you and I, but we've lost our roots. Our wild, Anglo-Germanic, thick-wooded, piss-in-the-hair and run-into-battle-naked roots. Motha. That's the word. It's closest in relation to maggot or midge. Makes sense, doesn't it? See a butterfly and think, oh, there's a pretty thing. Hope it travels well today. See a moth and you want to squish it and kill it under your heel and turn it away from you. Maggot. There's nothing nice about maggots. They eat dead flesh. Never be a maggot. Not a maggot, nor a fish, but you can be a butterfly. And I will keep you in my chambers with all the rest, to look pretty and be looked prettily at. Now kiss me before it gets dark. I want to see the moon tonight. Dear Leppy, remember the first time we shared a bed? I don't mean you and me, I mean us. Like a tree, you said, of root and branch and leaf. And we were a tree, strong and harsh and solid, but swaying in the wind, unbreakable. We were natural then, weren't we? When I looked into the mirror, I unrecognized myself, or rather, I saw the me I'd always wanted to see and could not remember what I'd looked like. But that was before I understood optics, darling. The light is not fantastic. We do not see what is. We see what is perceived. Electricity snapping through the synapses and painting pictures in the mind. I perceived a god in the mirror, and so a god was created. But what is a god without his followers? Lesser, mortal. I have sold all of my reflective surfaces. I cannot bear to see myself as I am now. All except for one item, in fact. The broken mirror in the attic, the one you tossed the day Linnaeus left us. It fits, for perception is reality, and I perceive a shattered man, so shattered a man I am withered. Darling, the tree has withered. Leppy, I've been praxis. I've read all the books you told me to, and one or two you forgot to mention. I'm failing on practice, but I certainly have the luster for it, and I see now what you meant when you said there's a world out there, though I must admit, I quite like it here. I have my maggot opus scribbled in black ink on letters, and you never replied to. Since you left, I've noticed the shadows a little darker than they were, but that's November for you. Darker still. Was it this dark last year? Why won't you answer me? You're crystallizing. Linnaeus always had his Lepidoptera, and I thought you were mine, but I was wrong. Close, but wrong. You are not Lepidoptera, you are Lepidolite, a rock crystallizing into crystal. I know what to do with you now. I'm going to gorge you from the ground where you oar and crush you into sand. I'm going to toss the sand into your ocean and watch as an oyster feasts on you. Mucus, froth, and slime. With the slow blake of time you will encase. Crystal, chrysalis, hardened like you are. One day I'll go fishing and pluck you from the sea. I'll call you pearl and laugh as I toss you against the waves and count how many times the stone skips before it sinks, and I'll give each shell your name before I crush them underfoot like moth. Linnaeus will be doing something debauched by the toilets with some pretty thing called Charlene, and she won't know what she's getting herself into. I'll keep skipping, and the next time he invites me over for dinner and sex, I'll politely decline. I'll boil the oyster in my belly and vomit you back up. Isn't that all you've ever wanted? Someone to hate you so much you can justify hating yourself. I'm going to fix my mirror, Leppy, perhaps tomorrow or the day after. You won't hear from me for a while, perhaps ever. Do enjoy the sea. She was beauty, and he was desire. We mingled in the starlight and said, let's be lovers, because friendships are so very plain. She curled away from brighter lights, and he threw his arms open to the waters while I gasped on the smell of newness like the pages of a book or open legs. We spoke each other's names until hoarse and dry, and we couldn't remember who was which or which was who. Ours was power and ours was strange, but the glass case kept us tight, airlocked. With heaving breath, we croaked, drowning in air.